you want to change results, first must change behaviours. Our teams are a reflection of us. Therefore, the role of the sales manager, the sales leader in any organisation is absolutely pivotal to success. On the training programs we run, which we tailor by client, we focus on a number of key areas to equip your sales managers to support their salespeople in a way that will enhance the delivery of whatever the organisation is looking to achieve. We underpin that with some key principles. We draw upon, amongst others, Steve Covey. Steve Covey says, look, if you want to change results, you must first change behaviours. We have to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Knowledge. Do my people know what to do? We need to consider skills. And skills is about, I might know what to do, but do I really know how to do it? And lastly, of course, it's about motivation. It's the degree of effort and energy that someone puts into whatever endeavour they're doing. And in sales, if I'm going to actually influence the end column, which is the margins column, the revenue column, the volume column, whatever the column is in your last column, if I want to change that result, I must change the behaviours that get me that result. On our sales management programs, we focus on these three areas. We test them, we critically appraise them, and importantly, we then give you the tools in order to understand how to identify them, but importantly, how to address them in a very practical way. If you want to change results, you first must change behaviours, which begs a very important question. How do I do that? What I will do over the next few minutes is illustrate some of the key ways in which we tackle this, and importantly, equip your sales managers to help their people give the best of themselves. So one of the first places to start is to understand the relationship between what the organisation is trying to achieve, its vision, its mission and its strategy, and how that translates through into sales plans. My sales plan as a sales manager, as a sales leader, does that correlate to what the overall vision, the overall organisational goal is? I have to make that connection. Experientially, I have identified, my colleagues who work in a similar area with me, is that is not always the case. So what I actually have is I have a dilemma. I have salespeople maybe working and putting effort and energy into things that don't always fit to what it is we're trying to achieve as an organisation. So we do that. We critically appraise it in a very structured way. We then move into what is fundamental for us as managers and leaders in the business. When to manage and when to lead. What is the difference between the two? You can have a lot of fun with this subject, and importantly we do. The synopsis of it is, though, we manage things and we lead people. So I, as a manager and a leader in the business, I need to understand what management is. What exactly is it? What are the key tenets of it? But I also need to understand and be able to identify those attributes that go to make up a great effective leader. So where do we move after that? We look at what the constituent elements of building an effective team, the stages and the dynamics of teams and team building. We draw on work as much as anything, Drucker, Tuckman, for example, and we use videos, case studies, all sorts of different methodologies to enhance and bring it to life. Another key area is motivation and motivation theory. So we draw upon such seminal work as Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we bring it up to date into the modern environment within which we work. We overlay that with such notables as Hertzberg, for example, who explores hygiene factors. We also look at Daniel Pink's work, which is recently published in the New York Times. Some of his groundbreaking work looks at intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. And we combine all of these to really help you as managers and leaders just to understand a little bit more about what triggers human behaviour, how it gets people to act in particular ways. Experientially, I can say without question that some of the time in my career I have unintentionally demotivated some people in the team in the same way that I have. These sessions help you understand a little bit more about what makes your people tick. Of course, Drucker said if it doesn't get measured, it won't get done. So one of the other key areas for us to look at is understanding the importance of key performance indicators. Now, remember at the start I talked about if you want to change results, you want to change behaviours. I want to just give you a little illustration about measuring how measuring the right behaviours can provide you with the opportunity to coach your people effectively. Key performance indicators. Let's talk through a few examples to see if we can identify some of the gaps in terms of how someone is performing. Now, is it knowledge? Is it skills? Is it motivation? Let's just take this by way of illustration. So you have a salesperson who has a task to conduct 10 face-to-face meetings in any 1 week with his clients. Let's keep it really simple by way of illustration. That's the task, that's what the standard is, that's what the objective is. And her actual is 10. Now, what's the first thing it tells us? Well, yep, they're hitting the standard. Okay. You go back to knowledge, skills, motivation. Well, we know they're motivated enough to do enough, so that's sort of okay. We don't know the effectiveness in terms of how they're conducting those calls, and we certainly don't know what the outcome is of those calls. So at the moment we might say, yeah, this person's motivated enough to do enough. But remember, of course, if I want to change the end column, I've got to change behaviours. So if this person's not hitting their target at the moment, I might think, that's quite difficult. Maybe I should get them to do more. Well, let's go a little bit further. Now, of those 10 calls, we decide to measure decision maker contact. Decision maker contact, DCM. Now, the standard is to meet a decision maker at every single call. Okay, so in this instance we say, right, the target is 10. However, because we're now measuring the interaction they have with their clients, we identify that the actual is 5. So that is only 50% effectiveness in relation to this key measure here, which is decision maker contact. So, do they know they should do 10? Well, if the standards have been set and communicated, one might argue, in this case, they probably do. We know they're motivated enough to go out and do enough calls, because we know that, so we can kind of tick the motivation box in a very small way. But in terms of the skills, we say, oh, actually, hold on a second. Do they know how to get the decision maker contact? So we might need to test this with them. And how would we do that? Well, we'd do it by way of field accompaniments. We might even sit and just ask them about how they go and get their appointments, who they're seeing and why they're seeing them. Because the root cause, just by way of simple illustration, could be they just don't know how to get appointments with their key decision makers. If you go back to the sales training model we talked about earlier on in terms of account prioritization, if part of my strategy is account retention, I need to meet with key decision makers 100% of the time. So straight away here, we've now got ourselves a little bit of a problem. You could go even further, of course, is actually talk about close ratios. And let's explore this just that little bit further. A close ratio, let's just say the average close ratio in the team is 5-to-1. So that's the average in the team. The average in the team, 5-to-1. And let's just say, by way of illustration, that we're okay with that. Okay with that. We look at this guy though, and we actually see it's 8-to-1. So for every 8 calls, he's converting 1 piece of business. The team on average is for every 5 calls, they're converting 1 piece of business. Just by asking this person to do more is not going to provide the key. What we need to do is help him reduce that 8-to-1 to maybe 7-to-1. It could be because he or she is not meeting enough of the right decision makers, might not be asking enough of the right questions, maybe not listening, not identifying client needs, a whole range of other factors. So straight away what you can see, if you measure the right behaviours, you can identify the gap and then, importantly, coach the gap. In this instance, what we have done is we've used key performance indicators to identify a potential gap in performance. We can use that kind of data. We can also use, of course, the fact of how well we know people and how they actually behave and interact on a daily, weekly basis. We can do that. A combination of the two will give you the basis of a coaching plan. On our training programs, what you will have when you leave is a framework for an effective coaching plan with each individual person in your team. You will have profiles using the skill-will model in terms of where people sit, in terms of their knowledge and their skills, and the degree of effort and energy that they put into how they do what they do. You will have also profiled yourself in terms of your sales management style and how your style will have an impact either positively or negatively on different people in your team. And of course, coaching. You've got a coaching plan, but of course we need to then be able to coach. And one of the core texts we look at, of course, is Miles Downey. Miles Downey, a great advocate of coaching, well worth looking at some of his material. And of course, we use frameworks such as the GROW model developed by Graham Alexander. So we don't just use those models and talk about those models, we practically apply them in coaching situations in a classroom in a safe environment. So let's just remind ourselves, if you want to change results, you must first change behaviours. We need to understand what those behaviours are that we need to change, and then importantly, take the time, trouble and effort to coach that gap